Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whoever you are, wherever you are, whenever it is for you. For me, it is just past midnight on Saturday, August 17th. So this is the news for Friday, August 16th, 2024, day 906 of Vladimir Putin's war of aggression against the people of Ukraine. Hey, Cyberdoc. Hey, Cyberdoc. I saw your comment, and it was an interesting turn of phrase, Russian-influenced Westerners. I thought that was a very interesting turn of phrase. It describes a particular subset in the West that have been influenced by Russian propaganda in ways that they shouldn't be, because they should know better. We should all know better by now. Hey, Mad Mike. Hey, Hobo. Hey, Cheyenne. Robert Chapman, how you doing? Brighter Shade of Gray. That's an interesting name. Yeah, so, dude, I thought that was an interesting turn of phrase that I don't think I've ever heard put quite that way. It was well put. Hey, Jay. Hey, Jessica. The peeps are coming in. Howdy, peeps. Today is, this is the news for Friday, August 16th, day 906 of Vladimir Putin's war of aggression against the people of Ukraine. Hey, Bobby. Hey, Parda. Hey, Hardly. Bjorn is here. Hey, Bjorn. Thanks. So there's a lot going on, boy. There's a lot going on. Hey, long time no see, Sergeant at Arms. Long time no see. I'm plugging along, hardly. I'm plugging along. A lot of air raids in Kyiv these days. Hey, Ian. A lot of air raids, although the power has been on. In fact, on Monday, the mayor of Kyiv said that essential services have been fully restored to the city. Hey, Marilyn. And it certainly seems that way. I haven't had any interruption in power service in, well, gosh, all week. It's Friday, right? So I can say definitely no power outages since last weekend. And so things are picking up here. So a couple of things, guys. Let's get started then, since the peeps are in. The big news, of course, is Kursk. And the reality is that the Ukrainian incursion into Russia has flipped the script on the entire war. It has forced the Russians to reconsider their position and what this war is costing them. It has demonstrated to the world that the Russian border is undefended, except everybody's at the front line. All the resources are at the front line. Russia herself is hollow. She's a hollow egg ready to be crushed. Anybody who wanted to walk across the Russian border right now in force could do it anywhere. That's not Ukraine. That seems to be the case. And it appears as though the Ukrainians are getting some initial benefits out of this immediately. The number of glide bomb attacks in the Donbass is down by half. The attacks on the airfields and the glide bomb munitions means that the Russians are being forced to move their fighter jets back farther away from the line. The farther they are away from the line, the fewer the sorties that they can actually run. The mayor of Sumy said that glide bomb attacks in Sumy are down to 1/10 of what they had been. Now, the Russians are apparently dropping bombs on Russia. They don't have anything else to do. They are a one-trick pony. Attritional attacks and bomb the living shit out of everything. And it appears that they are using those tactics inside of Russia. Not well, not in force, as it's going to take time for this great behemoth that is Russia to turn and get the necessary people from where they are now to where they need to be, and then put them to work. And they are pulling people from everywhere. We have reports of Russian troops being pulled from Kherson, Zaporizhia, Donetsk, Luhansk, the Kharkiv forward positions, as well as Murmansk and Kaliningrad and other places inside of Russia. And so every man that they can find, they are sending to Kursk to defend the motherland. That appears to be the case. Now, for those of you who follow the channel, you know that I've bought into the thinking of a guy named Dominic Nichols. Dominic Nichols is a former British Army officer. He's got the Ukraine Latest podcast. And when the Kursk incursion happened, he said, wait a minute, look at where they're going in. They're going in adjacent to this comma-shaped area of Russia that sticks inside Ukraine. Wouldn't it make sense for them to just straighten that border out and have a nice straight front line from Sudza through Rilsk to Bryansk? And it appears that that's exactly what the Ukrainians are doing. Today, if you look at that pocket of Russia that's surrounded on three sides by Ukraine, where all this action is happening, you will notice that there is a river, the River Seine, and the river cuts off about a third of that pocket. They started blowing the bridges today over that river. And so we saw the biggest and most eastward bridge blown today. And that just isolates all of Russia down to the Ukraine border, south of the river. If I was a Russian border guard or a Rosguardia or a Russian regular, some conscript that was down south of the Seine, I'd be looking to either make plans to surrender or get my ass out of there. Now is the time to go before the other bridges get blown. There was a rumor that a second bridge had been blown, but I don't have any confirmation of that. And there are 4 bridges across that river. It appears that what the Ukrainians are doing is they're moving along the northern bank of the river, and they're going to cut off everybody that's below there. Everybody below there is going to be trapped between Ukraine and the Ukrainian army. That appears what's going to happen. And they are clearly moving toward Rilsk. Any Russian in Russia, Rilsk or south of Rilsk, should get the fuck out now or plan to live with the Ukrainians as your neighbors, because that's clearly what's going down. CNN was at the border into Kursk and showed that the Ukrainians are in full control of the border. They are moving without any Russian resistance at all at the border. An Italian news crew was also inside of Russia today, inside of Kursk. And I want to highlight that that's one of the critical differences in this invasion. In the Ukrainian invasion of Russia, we're seeing a free press at work. In the Russian invasion of Ukraine, you saw the free press shut down or hunted. Who's seen 120 Days in Mariupol? Come on. We know what the Russians do to the press. So right off the bat, there is a huge difference in this invasion. Huge. There was a fella, for those of you that don't listen to the Ukraine, the latest podcast from the Daily Telegraph out of London, I highly recommend it. There was an analyst on there from the Rand Corporation today, a Michael Bohert. And he had some real, what I thought was insight into the electronic warfare components and their importance in this offensive. And he gave a lot of technical detail, but he went through point by point what the Ukrainians had done, or rather, what they would have to have done to achieve the results that it appears that they have achieved. And it is not an easy task, boy. And it really gives you a lot of respect for the Ukrainians listening to an expert like Michael Bohert talk about the difficulties of suppressing communications using electronic warfare equipment. And it had me standing in awe of the Ukrainian execution. He went on, he talked for some time. And one of the points that he made is that Russia ramped up its defense production capabilities faster than the West has been able to ramp up our defense production capabilities. But that gap is closing. We're breaking new ground on production facilities every day. Existing production facilities are being revamped and brought back online. And he made the suggestion, and I thought this was really right on the money, boy, right on the money. He said, look, everybody in the West has been hesitant to dig into their strategic stockpiles because they don't want to be left unarmed if the Russian bear comes after them. Makes perfect sense. Except now we're at a point in this war where we know it's going to take Russia 5 years to rearm itself. With the way that we're ramping up defense production capacities, you can be rearmed before Russia. And so the hesitancy around digging into the strategic stockpiles in the West should be alleviated by this knowledge that we are now outpacing Russia in defense production. And anything we give to the Ukrainians, we can order and have replaced so that we have bright, shiny new shit before the Russians can rearm. And I thought that was very insightful, and I couldn't agree with him more, that the West should be digging more in, because now is the time. Now is the time. The beast is wounded. Kill it while it's wounded. We got to stop this equivocating. He also said, he a really great guy to listen to, I'll tell you. He talked about the fact that Ukraine is achieving fire control over the railroads and roads. Now, look, you can't fight a war if you got no bullets and an empty stomach. You got to have bullets, and you got to have food, and you got to have clean drinking water, and you got to be able to support these troops on the front line, right? You can't fight a war without supplies. The fact that Ukraine is cutting off the ground lines of communication, there are going to be Russian groups that get stranded, that get cut off from the main supply routes and are kind of trapped in these hinterlands of Kursk. Well, what are they going to do to resupply them? They're going to resupply them by helicopter because that'll be the only way to do that. And what have the Ukrainians been targeting, and how have they targeted them? Drones on helicopter warfare. We've now got 4 videos, 2 in which Ukrainian FPV operators miss, and 2 where they hit. We've got 3 examples of helicopters being taken out by FPV drones. This is a new class of warfare. And Mr. Bohert essentially suggested that it's not a coincidence that the Ukrainians have been working on this drone helicopter interceptor methodology at a time when the helicopters are going to play a critical role in resupplying isolated segments of active units. And that was very interesting to me. I really was I got to find this guy's, he's got a channel someplace. I got to find him and follow him because he's brilliant. He's brilliant. Now, yesterday, what did I say yesterday? What did I fucking say yesterday? I said, where's the Freedom of Russia Legion? Where's the Siberian Brigade? Where's the Russian Volunteer Corps? Why aren't they in this thing? because they're nowhere to be found, right? And I suggested, wait a minute. Maybe the Ukrainians understood the makeup of who they'd be capturing, that these are going to be a lot of young conscripts. Maybe the Ukrainians expected to take lots of POWs. It seems that way. The things that they're saying about building up an exchange fund so that they can get their own POWs back, 73% of which return to the front in the case of Ukraine. I don't know what the numbers are for Russia, but 73% of returned POWs choose to return to the front. Now, with these Russian volunteer corps, maybe, I suggested yesterday, they're in the back talking to the prisoners of war, trying to recruit. And today, on their Telegram channel, they basically broadcast that message. They broadcast a message out to the Russian regulars and conscripts and anybody fighting for Russia. They said, look, you got to make a choice. You got to decide whether you're going to fight so that Gerasimov can have a new mansion, or you're going to fight for a normal Russia in the modern world. And if you want to fight for a normal Russia in a modern world, then just surrender to the Ukrainians and let us know that you want to be on our team. That's basically what they said. And so that felt good, because I felt like, yes, that's exactly where they should be. That's what they should be doing. And that is what they're doing. And I called it yesterday. I like it when I'm right. It's great. It's a great feeling. At least it appears that that's something like that is the truth. The Ukrainians have established a military commandant office in Kursk to work with the locals. Although the video that I'm seeing, it appears as though the locals that have remained are quite passive. Or at least they're giving the appearance of passivity for the most part. I've seen videos of Ukrainian soldiers talking to babushkas on the street, videos of locals shopping in their local grocery store unmolested, saying that they're being treated well by the Ukrainians, nobody's causing any problems. And so it's a very different invasion than when the Russians came into Ukraine. You can't even compare the two. In Sudza, a monument to Lenin was destroyed. That was pulled down and destroyed, taken down more Soviet symbols. At least 1,000 Russian troops have been redirected from the front to the Kursk direction at this time. More are expected. Though I have to say, listening to Defense Minister Belousov today, he said regarding the plan for Kursk that they are planning a meeting in which to discuss the plan. That's as far as they are going into the 11th day of this invasion. They are planning the meeting to discuss the plan. That is pretty sad, boy. That is pretty sad. In Korenovo, there was a convoy that was hit. So Korenovo is in the northwest corner of this incursion, and it appears as though the Ukrainians are encircling it, and they're going to bypass it and just leave whatever forces are in there for later to be dealt with. But it appears that this hit on the convoy was very similar to the Rilsk hit. Remember the very first day of the incursion, there was a column of 15 troop transport vehicles with about 390 soldiers in them that was hit by HIMARS, and all 390 of those soldiers were unalived. It appears that another such HIMARS hit happened in the Korenovo direction today against another column of Russian troops. Ukraine's postal service, Ukroposta, has opened a mobile office in Sudza. So you can now send mail using Ukrainian stamps inside of Russia. Really, really exciting. What have some of the effects of this been? We talked about the glide bombs. We talked about the planes being moved back. What we didn't talk about was what Mykola Podolyak said. He's an advisor to Zelensky. And he said essentially that Ukraine is now setting the terms for negotiations. Russia is now seen as an impediment to negotiations because now Russia's saying that they won't negotiate, right? And these are just some of the effects. One of the questions that I had today, which I honestly hadn't thought of until today, but we have Article 5 in NATO. Somebody attacks a NATO country, all countries are supposed to consider themselves attacked, right? And provide support. Well, they got something similar in Russia, the CSTO, right? Which I famously refer to as Putin's Dollar Tree NATO. Now, that organization used to have 9 members, but Uzbekistan, Azerbaijan, and Georgia, and now Armenia, have all left it. That leaves 5 member states. You got Russia, who needs the help and has been attacked. Well, where is Kyrgyzstan? Where is Kazakhstan? Where is Tajikistan? The Stans, right? Where the fuck is Stan? We haven't heard a peep out of these guys. Certainly nobody is volunteering to send Putin troops. Nobody is volunteering to send a bunch of Tajiks to die for Vladimir's ego, are they? Where is the CSTO? The only one who is being supportive is Belarus. And we're seeing an interesting dichotomy with Belarus right now. Lukashenko could appear to be a little schizophrenic, but I think I know why. Because on the one hand, Lukashenko and his defense minister are saying all the time that Ukraine is provoking them. Ukrainian drones are hitting on Belarusian soil. We need to deploy defenses to the border, right? We are an imminent threat of attack. And now, out of the other side of his mouth, the guy is saying, hey, we need negotiations. You guys should calm the fuck down, sit down, and talk about it. Why the dichotomy? And why now? 2 things. I think all this talk about Ukraine as an enemy has less to do with Ukraine than it does with Putin. I think Lukashenko is creating a situation on the border, the idea of tensions with Ukraine, so that he can keep telling Putin no when Putin asks him for troops. The 60,000 men that he has in his army is all he's got. They are under-equipped and under-trained. They are mostly there to keep the peasants from coming at the presidential palace with pitchforks and torches and hanging his sorry ass out in the street. That's what the army of Belarus is for. It is not for fighting Putin's war. And Lukashenko is afraid that if he gives them up, he's going to be that. I think that Lukashenko is overall afraid that he's about to lose his world. And he is, because Belarus is next. There's no doubt about that. The opposition forces in Poland are already working to undermine him. And he has no popular support. So he is done. It's just a question of time. But I think that the invasion of Russia has spooked him. He provided a launching pad for the attack against Kyiv. If Kyiv suddenly finds itself done with the war with Putin, who's to say that they're not going to seek vengeance against him and try to get Lukashenko out of there and get the democratically elected government in exile back into power in Minsk? And so Lukashenko has called for peace talks. And I think that that's why. I think he's also concerned at the way that he is being disarmed. Because Belarus is being disarmed by Russia in its desperation for weapons. It is raiding everything. In fact, the equipment that it is taking from the Belarusians now is not coming from warehouses. It's coming from active duty units of the Belarusian military, which could indicate that the Belarusians are also running out of equipment and they're having to take it from their active duty people. Lukashenko's got to be afraid that the clock is ticking for him. That's certainly what it looks like from the outside. There was a HIMARS strike on the Lgov railroad station, 50 kilometers north of Sudza. So again, this is the Ukrainians cutting ground lines of communication. You can't fight a war if your people are hungry and have no bullets. There are reports that criminal cases are being prepared in Moscow against the generals responsible for the Kursk invasion, or at least the people that the Kremlin is going to scapegoat for this thing. So they're picking out their traitors and their targets now, and they're getting their hangman's noose ready. I thought this was a good quote from John Kirby on the subject of Ksenia Karolina's 12-year sentence to a gulag, a work colony, sentenced to hard labor for 12 years, supposedly for donating $50 to a Ukrainian support group. I mean, really, the reason that she's in captivity is because she's a hostage and she's an American. And we should be thinking about how we can get this American back home. Boy, it would be great with Russia's initiated prisoner swaps, because now the number of prisoners taken in Kursk appears to be between 2,000 and 3,000. And Russia has initiated a call for a prisoner swap. And apparently the Russian and Ukrainian counterparts are discussing the return of hundreds of prisoners in the upcoming swap. It would be great if the Ukrainians could get Ksenia back for the Americans. I know it's not their problem, and it doesn't really fall into the POW thing. But while you're having the conversation, if Ukraine could help us rescue an American girl from a terrible fate of 12 years in a gulag, America would be grateful, Kyiv. Yeah, we would. John Kirby called her sentence vindictive and cruel and said, quote, "It proves all the more there is no real system of justice coming out of Moscow." And I don't think truer words were ever spoken. Kursk is on the front line in Ukraine. Kursk is under an evacuation order as the Russians continue to approach. Every day that you wait to leave Kursk, the chance of being able to pack what you want to save drops. So anybody that's out that way should get the fuck out. Pack the car and go. It's time to leave. So in the early morning hours last night, while we were listening to air defense shoot down a couple of drones that came in here over Kyiv, loud explosions were heard all over Crimea. The Kursk ferry site was hit. Now, the Kursk ferry, when we think about goods transiting from Russia to Crimea over the Kursk Strait, 75% of all military and commercial goods come in through the ferry terminal. So if you want to starve Crimea, you got to hit the ferries. And that's what they did last night. There was also a boat that was targeted, but we don't know if the boat was sunk or not. Loud explosions across Crimea, in Sevastopol, Simferopol, Kursk area, and Chermovasisk, where the boat was docked. The Kursk bridge itself was shut down from 2 a.m. to 7 a.m. There were reports of long queues waiting to get across the Kursk bridge today. The air defense for the bridge was destroyed. That was a Panzer S-1. And so while it wasn't an attack on the bridge, it was an attack on the bridge's defenses. And Russia's down another Panzer S-1. Spokesperson for the Ukrainian Navy, Dmitry Pelenchuk, said back in June, for everybody who's wondering when the bridge is going to come down, it is worth reminding everybody of what Dmitry said back in June, that the bridge is unviable, that less than 1/4 of the total transiting cargo, most of it commercial, not military, is all that comes across the bridge. The bridge is effectively neutered as a supply route for military aid into Crimea. The Russian MOD claims that they shot down 12 ATACMS in last night's attack. Seems unlikely. And 1 year ago, the new corridor, in the wake of Putin abandoning the grain deal, a new safety corridor was opened for the transit of goods from Ukraine to the rest of the world. Since that time, 64 million metric tons of goods have been shipped to 46 countries through that corridor. Export levels are returning to pre-war or even exceeding pre-war numbers, depending on whether you're talking about agricultural goods, ores, metals, etc. And with that, I'm sorry, one other thing. For all of you out there for the 420 crowd, today is August 16th, 2024, and today medical cannabis became legal in Ukraine. I don't have a doctor yet, but I'm going to get one. Hey, Jeff. Lopsided, I think you mean the bridge is a symbol, and I think you're right. And I think when the Ukrainians have the time to get to it, they will. Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself, PT. They are spending ammo on more strategic areas and less on symbolic. Exactly. I think that's exactly right, PT. I saw a Ukrainian grain ship was on fire in the Black Sea. Any news on that? I don't know anything about that, Nightshade. First time hearing of it. Thanks, Nightarsk. We'll see how that works out, but hopefully the glaucoma's terrible, hardly. If I don't get my medicine, I'm going to be blind. You see the way I'm squinting at the thing every night? No word on recreational as far as I know. Any idea if the railway connection between Mariupol to Crimea is functional? And I don't know. I don't know what's happening with that. There was word that it had been completed. Then there was word that the Ukrainians had hit the rail bridge, and the bridge was like a 3 or 4 month project to rebuild. So I'm not sure what the status is of that new rail line. No. PT, that's a great question. I don't have a good answer. Mel, I don't think you mean J-dams, right? Mel is saying J-dams are being talked about for the F-16. We've already provided J-dams. I think what you're thinking of are the JASSMs. That's Joint Air to Surface Standoff Missiles. And these have a range of 370 miles, if I'm not mistaken, and hardpoint attachments for the F-16. So they're an intermediate range missile that could be a political solution to the impasse that we're at with the use of ATACMS on Russian soil. We could toe the line and still say no ATACMS, but then give them the JSAMs, which should do the job. What role are the F-16s playing in all this? To the best of my knowledge, Sergeant at Arms, they are not. There's been talk that they have run combat missions to intercept incoming missiles, but that's all so far that I've heard. Do you think NATO is already helping with the operation in Kursk like Putin is stating? No, I do not, Nightarsk. So the claim, it's not just that Putin is claiming that NATO planned the mission or provided intelligence. We know that NATO provides intelligence. Of course, NATO is providing satellite photos of the whole Russian-Ukrainian, Belarusian-Ukrainian, Polish-Ukrainian, Romanian-Ukrainian borders. You know they are. Of the whole Black Sea, you know they are. Then the Ukrainians do with that intel what they will, because it clearly took everybody by surprise, this incursion. Nobody knew about it. And given the fact that the Russians were leaked all the details of last summer's counteroffensive, good for the Ukrainians for not telling a fucking soul. Nobody needs to know. Plans love silence. So I don't have any problem with any of that. Russian media has gone so far as to say that it is British, French, German, and American troops in Kursk, because it can't be the slur word for Ukrainians that the Russians use all the time. It can't be those people. First of all, they don't have any men left. It's just women and children in the trenches, right? Who has lost more men? By all accounts, Mario, the Russians have lost far more men. That number is about to hit 200,000. KIA. Paul, what happened to Hayes? You talking about the doc who was on last night? He was on last night. We had a great conversation. I thought we had a good conversation. Let me know in the comments what you thought about our conversation, or shoot me a DM if you have particular feedback. But you know, Paul, I don't usually do that, but it was good to have the doc on, and I thought we had a good conversation. Melanie has good news in Ohio. Nice. If NATO is there, who wants to see my unicorn in the backyard? Ooh, I want to see a unicorn. It's sad for all the losses. Yes, it is. Jeff thought it was a great conversation. Thanks, pal. Yeah, no, I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of the guy. Speaking of fans, I'm also a fan of Beatrice Sella, who some of you know, who is the sponsor of tonight's live. So thanks, Beatrice Sella. Cynthia is her real name. I don't think she minds me saying that. So if anybody sees Cynthia around, please thank her for me and for us. Oh, yeah, Ant, the sirens went off just before the live. We're under air alert here. I don't know what that is, Nightshade. Ukraine plans way better than Russia. No kidding. No kidding. Real quick, guys, let me just thank the moderator team. The moderator team, best moderators on the Tickety Talk. Cheyenne, Vanetta, PT, John Williams, J, and Travis. Thank you, guys. Thanks to Lars, who has the Discord server and the Alexievich archive. Thanks to Vanetta, who's got the Dismantle Project 2025 group on the Book of Faces, and our Google Doc share, where you can find email message templates to Congress, the Senate, and the White House for all kinds of requests related to no-fly zones west of the Dnipro, unrestricted use of ATACMS, etc. Hi, Sweden. More Ukraine advance will stretch supply line in defense, become thinner, advance and dig in. Okay. This channel is so professionally run. All of you rock. I've watched since day one. Well, thanks, Paul. I appreciate your kind words. Thank you. Hey, Mike Gordon. So it could, Mel, Russia is never going to recover from this. I firmly believe when this is all said and done, there will not be a Russia in any way that resembles the Russia that it is today. They're done. They're done. How are the bacon and eggs treating you? Well, it's awfully hard to find bacon here. You can't find bacon. The eggs are fine. The eggs have not doubled and a halved in price in Ukraine the way they have in Russia, boy. Eggs in Russia went from 100 rubles for 10 last year to now an average of 223. Doubled and more. I'm paying about 62 hryvnia for 10 eggs because you can't get them by the dozen here. It's so fucking annoying. So I'm paying about 62 hryvnia, and I was paying about 62 hryvnia a year ago for 10 extra large. I get the jumbo eggs. So huge difference in how things are going for the two economies. Oh, the U.S. Bradleys do a fine job. Have Lavrov or Putin made some stupid comment today? No, but I did quote Bela Yusuf, the new defense minister, the economist, who said that they are planning the meeting where they will hear the plan for dealing with Kursk. 11 days into a foreign invasion of your country, and your defense minister says we are planning a meeting to talk about the invasion plans. It's unreal. Yeah, Jacko, that's not how any of that works, pal. That is not how any of that works. Lavrov looks like a bloodhound. Interesting. What kind of government do you think will be there? Where? In Russia after the collapse? I have no idea. I really don't. Let's hope it's a change. Bacon and eggs, that's a lot of cholesterol. Well, that depends on what your cholesterol is. Right? There are people who have problems with cholesterol, and there are people who do not. My last cholesterol, my family suffers from low cholesterol, which is a problem all in and of itself. So cholesterol is not my problem. I have lots of problems. That is not one of them. Jacko, are there a lot of Bradleys in private hands? A lot of private infantry fighting vehicles for sale out there? I don't know where you're going to find that, pal. That's not a thing. Van, I didn't see anything about a Ukrainian soldier being beheaded recently. That shit mostly seemed to stop when Wagner was out of it. I haven't heard of that. Paul, you got to remember the ethnic oblasts are not truly ethnic oblasts. The native populations in those oblasts have been subject to genocide since they were attacked and made part of the Russian Empire. And so in most of those places, the Russians outnumber the local native inhabitants 2-1. It's not quite what you're thinking, I don't think. Mel, there is no Navy at Sevastopol anymore. I mean, there literally is no Navy in Sevastopol. The ships are all gone or at the bottom of the bay. No looting in Kursk by Ukrainian troops, but there has been a lot of looting by Russian troops and by local Russians themselves. There's a great video out on one of the Telegram channels I follow of a couple of Ukrainian security forces interviewing some local Russian women who have freaking shopping carts full of their neighbors' belongings. They just looted their neighbors' homes. It's unreal, these fucking people. Have I eaten chicken Kyiv? It was one of the first things I did when I got here, actually. Yes. I had never had it before, to be honest. I think any Bradleys that are coming into this country are coming in from the United States government. I mean, it's just that simple. Look, if you want to help out with vehicles for the front line, Zampo Tech is a foundation that I do a lot of work with here, and they're currently refurbishing 2 Humvees. I don't have the PayPal handy. I don't know PT or Vanetta. I don't know if one of you guys could grab it off the post that I made in the Peter's Peeps public group. But anybody that donates to this cause and sends me the receipt, $50 or more, I'll give you a live sponsorship. And so you don't have to start your own fundraiser to be effective in the world, to do something good and get some recognition for it. You can do that right now. Well, it's mafia run now, so if it's still mafia run after the collapse, it'll just be a lateral move. Am I still having trouble with the TikTok shadow bans? Yes. There's no doubt about it. I mean, I don't even understand how it's possible what's happening. But my shit is definitely being suppressed. Those 3 videos I did today, I mean, they're no better or worse than anything I ever do. They're consistent, but they're on interesting topics. They should all be getting play. And when I last checked, I don't think any of them had 200 views. I mean, it used to be I could post something, it would have 200 views, like by the time I checked. Now, there's nothing there. Hey, Roy Daniels, how you doing? You grilling, nice. Everything in Kyiv is good for right now. I think there's some drones on the way. There are International Legion fighters. I don't know where they are, but they are certainly still active all up and down the front line, or wherever it is they are. I don't know where they are. Thank you, Cheyenne. That's it. Cheyenne just pinned, that's the PayPal for the Humvee fundraiser. They've got 2 Humvees. They're just about refurbished. I think they only need $2,000 for the bulletproof glass for the windshields. And that's it. They're off to the front, these trucks, and where they're needed. So anybody donates $50 or more to Zampo Tech, send me the receipt. My email address is in my bio, and I'll give you a live sponsorship. Or you can just donate because you're a good person and not tell anybody. I think some of you have done that already, from what I'm hearing from the Zampotech guys, because I haven't gotten a single receipt in my email. But some money did come in, so whoever those anonymous donors are, thank you. You betting on the football? Cool. Could it be because China's on the side of Russia and that's why it's being suppressed? Yeah, Magical, it's not just me. It's all pro-Ukrainian, pro-democracy voices on TikTok. Yeah, absolutely. Do you think Russia can amass troops in Kursk with HIMARS guarding the entrances? They gonna try, Bobby. They gonna try. Whether or not they're going to ever make it to the front to engage the Ukrainians is exactly the question to be asking. Yeah, Dive Hard, it's the suppression of pro-Ukrainian voices is ongoing. There's no two ways about it. Two and a half years without going out on a Friday evening. And you've already forgotten about COVID? For some of us, it's 4.5 years without going out on a Friday evening. Oh, now that's interesting. Mel is saying that LGBTQ is being suppressed as well, which would make sense. I mean, that kind of scapegoating and othering of our fellow citizens is exactly what the autocrats do. Huh. I want a spoken word haiku from you when I finally sponsor a live. Okay, no problem. Yeah, China. Okay. Lopsided. Why aren't U.S. alternatives to TikTok popping up? Because TikTok's got this algorithm. And the algorithm is just about the best in the social media business. So TikTok has a proprietary algorithmic framework that's unmatched by anybody else's technology right now. And I think that's why lopsided. I think. As you were talking about earlier, I've had some weird things happen with comments removed today. Yeah, that happens all the time. Have a video of a Humvee with a tow system mounted taking out an RF tank. A Humvee against a tank. I mean, how do these guys think they're going to win? How do they think they're even going to be able to stay in it? Have you compared the size of the Ukrainian incursion into Russia against the Russian incursion into Kyiv? I mean, it's not even a tenth the size. And think of everybody that's died to get it. It's outrageous. It's outrageous, these people. I don't know how they think or if they do. Okay, it's 3 minutes to the top of the hour. I want to thank Beatrice Sella again, our sponsor for tonight. Thank you, Cynthia. I want to thank the moderator team, Cheyenne, Vanetta, PT, John Williams, Jay, and Travis. I want to thank Nightshade, who has the Peter's Peeps public group over on the Book of Faces, where I publish the live recording every day. So if you ever miss a live, you can always find it on Facebook, Peter's Peeps Public. Thanks to Vanetta Larrett, who's got the Google Doc share and the Dismantle Project 2025 group on the Book of Faces. Well, Larry, that is great news. I don't, I think it's unusual. Yeah, yeah. Let's all hope that Ant has a quiet night down in Odessa. Hey, Lars. Hey, Robbo. Thanks, Robbo. Good night, Anthony. How are the Dutch F-16s doing? I think they're indulging in the recent legalization of cannabis because we're not hearing shit out of them. Thank you, Colin. Thanks so much for spending an hour with us. Take care, Pugga Mahone. Good night, Alex. So, ladies and gentlemen, and other non-binary folks, on behalf of everybody here at Give Me a Minute, I'm Peter Alexievich, and I want to thank you all and wish you a pleasant tomorrow. Take care.